good evening and remain indoors.
Has become quite a mess. Oh, and here's the conservatory key, Jenks.
The north of England is experiencing an unexpected renaissance at this moment in time. It's just less the Disney-filled joy that you'd hope for, and more the debaucherous-filled murder orgies of 15th century Venice. We started off our comeback with the worldwide spectacle of Newcastle United defeating Liverpool and winning the cup after waiting for 70 years, which is a uniquely British venture, queuing for a long period of time in the hopes that the waiting will be worth it. Well, it kinda was. As a fellow fan that attended the Black Parade on that fateful day, I can confidently say, please let this be a one-off. A fitting substitute for anyone that missed out on the euphoric highs of standing for 4 hours and watching a bus drive by can be summed up by simply walking into any AA meeting in the land and telling them it's happy hour down the road. Elsewhere in the north, Hollywood came a-knocking and brought Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny up to Northumberland with the sole purpose of filling my ancestral home with Nazis and then proceeding to blow it up at the start of the film. And as the dust settles on Dr. Jones' illustrious career, the legendary actor Harrison Ford can finally hang up his hat and whip before he too becomes another artifact in a box examined by top men. But you know who else dealt with explosive Nazis for a long period of time? Rebellion Entertainment, the subject of today's video, and the creators of Atomfall, a game that represents a very niche market in the immersive industry, Northerners. It's important to bring up that statement because the art form of video games may have been around for over 40 years at this point. However, within that time span, we've only had Northerners show up in 6 of them. Either as a cameo, like the 2 in Broken Sword, or more ironically, in the Assassin's Creed titles, but just not the ones set in England. In case you're curious which ones have Northerners in them, it's Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Occasionally, when recruiting crewmates, you may hear a Northern accent.
Pulled me from the deep there, Captain. Jack thanks you hearty.
Assassin's Creed Unity has a conversation between 2 Geordies in a courtyard at the beginning of the game, and a few northern twangs can be heard throughout your time in colonial America thanks to Assassin's Creed 3. But alas, that's the list. I haven't forgotten about Valhalla, the game known for taking place in England, in which you historically take control of the innocent Vikings that accidentally slip their penises into the willing participants of the British Saxon folk, whilst being klutzy little butterfingers around torches and knives amongst priests and churches. They failed to add the entirety of the north of England, stopping the map off at Jorvik, also known as modern-day York.
England, our new home.
Not a patch on Norway, but we'll make this land our own soon enough.
We don't know how many died during that ferocious attack, but they weren't the only victims. As well as seizing gold and silver from the monastery, the Vikings carried off members of the island community as slaves.
Which must have been a necessary evil, given how short and small that project was. Surely adding a vital part of the landmass of Great Britain would have only bloated out the experience, making for a tiresome, tedious, grueling, never-ending slog.
Oh, by the way, I was being sarcastic.
Well, duh.
And yet here we are in 2025, and the studio known for having an unhealthy fascination with Hitlers Testicles, and creating the Sniper Elite franchise, has blessed us with something completely different. And that comes in the form of Atomfall, a game that lets you loose in the Lake District, a place known for expensive toilets. Seriously, 20p to go for a wee is legitimately taking the piss in my book, Wordsworth Grave, and of course a few dozen holiday homes. But with all that being said, at the end of the day, I am a northerner from the region, and I've had the pleasure to visit the Lake District numerous times before, and as an added bonus, my ancestors' name dons a statue commemorating those who fought during the Great Wars. So this isn't just a video for some quick clicks and an affiliation link. This project means a lot to me, which is why I wanted to find out just how northern is Atomfall, and along the way, maybe drop a few factoids to show my due diligence to this endeavour. So, let's get learning. Off the bat, the game starts by telling you it takes place in Cumberland, a name not heard for some time now, as now it's known colloquially as Cumbria. The name change was brought into effect in 1974 to cut costs to the region, which would now house Cumberland, Lancashire, and the South Lakes under one banner. Now, out the many dales, villages, and exploding sheep, seriously, why does that sheep look so happy to be dead? Oh, wait, his back end's blown out. He must be a Welsh sheep. There's one place in the games world that works both as an oddity and a touching tribute to the UK's media industry past, with some incredibly deep cuts that many videos may have missed out on. Surprisingly, that place isn't the bakery, which acts as a polar opposite juxtaposition to the other place across the road. But since I brought it up, we'll quickly touch on the bakery and my problems I have with it. Upon entering this location, we can see a collection of pastries and cobs on offer. However, very few of them fall into the realms of British origin. The Battenberg cake comes from Germany originally, the Victoria sponge is actually a French dish, and the bread rolls look to be universal bread rolls. A simple asset swap, however, could have added something so special that would have set this place apart and showed that the team did their research, and that is the inclusion of Stottie cakes. Let me explain. Stotties are a type of flattened bread that was created in the north of England during the latter stages of the 19th century, also known as a miner's lunch. The stottie or stottie cake was mainly consumed by working class communities and shipbuilders in the region that needed a quick meal for on the go. The word stottie also comes from the Geordie word for bounce. Even up until this day, many stotties can be found at your local Greggs, which, to be fair, is opened absolutely everywhere under the sun. Seriously, if you have open heart surgery and they aren't quick enough to close you up, you'll find 3 days later that a Greggs has opened up in your lower colon. Now time to discuss what I feel must be the most British place in this game. Across the way from the bakery, you'll find this pub. Stepping inside, we'll find some knickknacks and oddities, like how this is the only place in the entire game that has working flushable toilets. You can also play pool here and gaze at the pictures that are placed on the wall. The whole place feels like a sort of hub area that was cut late on in development.
How do?
But back to those pictures. Instead of simply hanging some concept art on the wall and moving on, a lot of the pictures in this place are actually real secured pieces of art protected by the National Trust. Like this picture of a woman entitled Elizabeth Allen, painted in England during the 17th century, or this picture of 2 sheep getting ready to make out. It's an oil painting created in Cumbria, but this pales in comparison to some very deep cuts found within this location. Firstly, we have the bartender.
Tonight, we will be partaking of a liquid repast as we wend our way up the Golden Mile, commencing with an inaugural tankard in the first post, then onto the old familiar, the famous cock, the cross hands, the good companions, the trusty servant, the 2-headed dog, the mermaid, the beehive, the king's head, and the hole in the wall for a measure of the same, all before the last bittersweet pint in that most fateful terminus, the world's end. Leave a light on, good lady, for though we may return with a twinkle in our eyes, we will in truth be blind. Drunk.
Blimey, you don't mince your words, do you?
Not only does he have a Geordie accent, marking the first time regional colloquialisms can be heard in a modern day video game setting, with phrases like out for nout being a major standout, but I believe he may also be a walking reference. Given his name is Alf and the way he dresses, I feel he could be a cheeky nod to Alf Garnett, a character from the BBC comedy Deaf to Us Part. Which, as a small factoid, the BBC is also the only TV channel specifically mentioned by name in this game via a collectible note, despite the fact ITV launched a few years later in 1955, which is a fact I'm bringing up now for the sole reason as I load Chekhov's gun, so please get ready for my load in your face. With that in mind, let's return back upstairs. The large room on your right that houses the pool table has a very special plaque placed above the fireplace, and this is where some very deep cuts and love for the British media industry comes into play. For all the names listed on this plaque are actually named after real TV shows, with the majority of them referencing the pub that appears within those shows. You have the Rovers Return Inn, which is based on the Rovers' return from Coronation Street, a long-running British shouting match disguised as a TV drama, which ran on ITV from 1960 until the Earth decides to die. Told you that ITV comment would come back into play. Next on the list is The Nag's Head, a clear nod to the comedy series Only Fools and Horses.
Right, fine.
I'm going down the nags.
I'm going down the nags.
The Wolf Pack, which is from another British drama entitled Emmerdale. Emmerdale is also set in the Yorkshire Dales, which is only an hour's drive away from the Lake District, making this a very cheeky deep cut. Now, the Queen Vic is actually based on a long-running argument that they like to call a TV drama entitled EastEnders.
I mean, why'd you let it get this bad? Why didn't you just get off your backside and do something before now? Oh, come on, Bianca. You know, this has got to have been brewing for months. You can't make out like you ain't had no chances to get straight, get a job, earn some money to sort it out. Well, that's what normal people do. Look, don't start shouting. You give me a headache.
Why? Why? Because I've been looking after our son. My kids, that's why.
It's where the do-do-do sound effect comes from, and also male pattern baldness. And finally, the Green Man is probably the most deepest cut within this game, as it's also inspiration for the church subplot that can lead to one of the game's many endings. The title The Green Man is based on a one-season-long BBC horror series that aired in the 90s and dealt with a man of God coming face to face with the occult. Now, after finding our Geordie bartender, I wanted to go even deeper and flush out some more interesting characters that make up the world of Atomfall. But before I tell you about our next stop on the journey, it needs a little context first. The north of England was primarily known for shipyards and mining communities, with some homes to this very day still relying on coal fires, which was one of the 3 perks if your husband or son worked down the mine. That became a livelihood for many working class families in the region, right up until the entire mining economy came to a screeching halt in 1984 under the Thatcher administration. With the wars ending, the shipyards disappeared, and what was left for the mining community as they resurfaced to find nothing but dust in the wind and a bleak future ahead. Austerity hit the north of England like an Oscar slap from Will Smith, and thus the times of prolonged depression began.
Still, never mind, eh?
And that brings us on to the slate miner in this game. We'll start with the clothes that make the man. For starters, the shoes for most characters in Atomfall may look like regular dress shoes, but they're not. As an attention to detail, the shoe brand is actually called K Shoes, with the history of this brand dating back to 1841. A year after Margaret's husband died in London, the family moved up to the Lake District in the region of Kendal to start up a shoemaking business with £300 in their pocket that their son acquired after a brief stint working in Ireland. By 1844, the business, with help from local Cumbrians, known for having a knack at creating strong leather, netted him a cool £5,000, which, adjusted for inflation, accumulates into £776,922 in today's currency. As the business grew, however, the Irish ventures diminished, and by 1857 a new technology for shoemakers arrived in Cumbria from America, the sewing machine. Whilst this new contraption sped up production of the soles, these shoes were still hand-stitched with a design that resembled a K. From that day on, the workers of the land would only wear what is known as the K shoe. I just find that detail rather fascinating and a bit baffling. The game goes out its way to put effort into making a shoe brand that not many people would even know about or really care about in that matter. However, the game doesn't have a pickaxe in any of the mines or even the entire game. It's a juxtaposition of obscure small details and glaring omissions that make this game quite infuriating in the long run, which becomes even more apparent when we talk about this man's helmet. It looks to be modelled off a fretford hat created by Pulp Manufacturing in Norfolk and co-developed by Hugh Wood and Company, a private division set up in Gateshead that also created the pickaxes used in the coal mines, just not the mines in Atomfall. Sadly, that attention to detail doesn't span the entire lake. Whereas the gameplay loop for Atomfall can be fun and engaging enough to carry the game to its credits, there are a lot of baffling decisions made along the way that overall I feel spoils the experience. So the major bugbear with this game comes down to customization. I get they want to make your character androgynous so it can act as an imprint for the player, even though the box art does show a bloke on the cover. But all that aside, I don't get why we can't equip gas masks or unisex armor sets that our enemies wear, or even specific items that wouldn't take away from the overall experience. These assets are already in the game. For example, to circle back around to our miner friend from earlier, why can't we equip his helmet that has a lamp on it, so we can choose to use a weapon and a flashlight in unison instead of needing to choose between one or the other? That's something that not even horror games do, as seen in the Resident Evil franchise or even Silent Hill. It's a small moment that would have made a world of difference. Another gripe comes down to the adventuring and spelunking of the game's world. The locations and environmental detail is top of the class in exploration. However, the lack of real rewards for exploring sullies the overall package, since you are limited to around about 10 weapons or so in the entire game. None of which, may I add, have any special variants outside of some looking rusty and others looking pristine. These molehills become mountains as the mini problems arise, and yet I remain hopeful that in the future I can eat my words, but as it stands, Atomfall feels like a lost PS3 game that finally fell from the skies and exploded onto modern day machines. I'm not saying this should have remained in quarantine, but much like an exercise routine during the times of COVID, it's fun to stretch your legs for a few hours before the war of attrition starts to set in and you feel yourself going feral. Now please can we reboot IGN, because not everything under the sun is a bloody 8 out of 10.
Its striking art style to the evocative music that brings big story moments together,
that satisfyingly bends to your choices and discoveries no matter which direction you take.
And this otherwise might be the sneakiest fun you can have going commando with your underwear on.
Just shy of 40 years, pension. He took all of it.
And it's good to finally have it.
Thanks for watching the one video on YouTube that isn't sponsored by Squarespace or some other mental health thing that wants to take your data. And I mean, yeah, if you did watch to the end, cheers for that. If you skipped to the end, then screw you, go back and watch it. This took for bloody ages to record, and especially with this accent. You could actually try to, sit there and articulate every single word, eventually beating yourself up and realizing just how much you hate your own voice. If the algorithm picks us up, I'll see you again. If not, I'll return probably in the far distant future when another game with a northern protagonist comes out. Which, I mean, it's pretty unlikely, isn't it? But anyhow, thanks for this. Enjoy the rest of your day. And if it's your last day, enjoy that as well. Right, see ya. Goodbye.
Here it is, my big chance. Last line of the show. I've got an area. Something about Rutger Hauer. No, wait. No,